seeing that and kind of, not wanting to lose her son to this life, actually went back to school, got our master's degree, was able to move us. So we moved from the south side of Chicago to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But not even Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, we actually moved to Monroeville, Pennsylvania. You know what I'm saying? So I went from a place, and Chicago, I feel like Chicago is very similar to Pittsburgh in regardless. Chicago is this place where these, democratic machine policies makes it a very segregated place. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I didn't go to school with any white people. I had none of the students, and I went to a Catholic school. So to come then to Monroeville was a very much a culture shock. And just to kind of rewind a little bit, my name is Jasiri. That's my given birth name, Jasiri X. And Jasiri is Swahili. It means brave warrior. So my mom, if you saw her, my mom's actually fairer than me. My mom had straight hair. My grandmother was from the Cherokee Indian tribe, a woman named Winona. But my mom raised us in a way where it was very much about being black, being proud to be black, which is why, my name is Jasiri X. My sister's name is Ayana Jahari. And so some people grew up in the church. I grew up in a household where it was very much about being black and socially conscious. So from a young age, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, W.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, these were the heroes that I was given. But a lot of that, it didn't really click to me in this area of where, I'm going to school. I'm in an environment that's 100% black. But when I got to Monroeville, Pennsylvania, that heritage kicked in. And it was the first time, I had never, if I had experienced racism at that time, I guess I wasn't necessarily aware of it, as a child growing up. But it's hard to miss it when somebody comes right up to your face, nigger or whatever. And so it was the first time I really experienced this racism, and then kind of all these things that my mother told me about, the struggle, the civil rights movement, when she was involved in, kind of was like, oh, this is what you mean. So as a student at Gateway High School, instead of just, accepting that this was the way things were, my upbringing, my heritage, what I inherited from my mother and how I was raised, made me say, no, I need to change this. I need to do something to change this. And so at Gateway High School, me and a friend of mine, we actually started a black club called Our Cultures Club. We say we want our own club. And we actually fought and petitioned Gateway High School to actually get a black history class. And I just remember me and my friend sitting across from the principal at Gateway and really arguing a case for why black history class was important. And I remember then them finally accepting that and getting the class. Now it was taught by a white teacher. It's baby steps, I guess. At least we got the class. He was a cool guy too. He was a cool teacher. We were like, we'll make that concession. But please, further on. So we had one black teacher at Gateway. And so, I ended up, being kind of one of those lucky ones, that kind of made it out of that. A lot, and that's an unfortunate situation, especially when you look at Chicago right now. And, everybody, unfortunately, doesn't have the opportunity to have a mother like I did, that was educated enough to be able to get a job at Westinghouse, which existed at the time, and move her family out of that environment. So I was one of the lucky ones that got an opportunity to go to a quote-unquote good school. You know what I'm saying? That wasn't necessarily meant for me. It was meant for somebody else, but I was lucky enough to slip in and graduate with honors and go to the University of Maryland and go to the University of Pittsburgh. And, I ended up going to Chicago for a brief period of time and coming back to Pittsburgh and working at Pittsburgh Public Schools. And so I'm working at Pittsburgh Public Schools, and my job was a teen parent advocate. Basically, I dealt with teen fathers for Pittsburgh Public Schools. And I'm sorry, that was my second job. My first job at Pittsburgh Public Schools was I was actually in charge of the after-school program at Carrick High School. I don't know if you're familiar with Carrick High School, but when I was at Carrick High School, and Pittsburgh is I was familiar with the east side of Pittsburgh. If you don't know the south side, you go on the south side, it's not like there's a main street that you can be familiar. You have to learn a racism that I saw at Gateway High School instead of being on a different side of it. And I saw how different the black students were treated. I saw how more often the black students were suspended. I started a hip-hop club at Carrick High School because I was running an after-school program. And I'm thinking, what can I do to get, especially particularly young black men, to stay after school? Because studies show that if you're involved in after-school programming, you have a higher chance of graduating. And at that time, 50% of young black male ninth graders were coming to Pittsburgh public schools and not make it to graduation. So I remember, I said, what do y'all want to do? I said, play basketball. We had no access to the gym, all right, that's out. And it was like, rap, okay, well, I'm a hip-hop artist. And I wasn't taking it seriously at the time, but I was like, I can rap, okay, let's do this. We're going to start a hip-hop club. And I didn't know that there was an unwritten rule in Carrick that after school, like the black students were supposed to be out of there. And I'm having this after-school program that had all of these black students staying after school, and so I began to meet with immense pressure from the school of Carrick about the program. So then eventually I was fired from that job. But the cool part is, Pittsburgh Public School has a union. So they couldn't fire me, what I mean? It was real. I don't know if you've ever experienced like being fired and then that person has to kind of like take you back. I don't know if it was a very awkward situation. I was like there and they put me in crazy classrooms and stuff. So I ended up becoming this teen parent advocate, which gave me the ability to go to all the high schools in Pittsburgh and really see that it wasn't much different. It wasn't that much different at Westinghouse. It was just the majority of the students are black. But the students being treated the same way. And it caused me to want to do something about it. Once again, it's like you get a situation. You see it's a messed up situation. Then the question becomes, what are you going to do about it? Not necessarily what somebody, you can write letters and say, what is somebody else going to do? Have you ever experienced that? Man, they need to bring somebody here to, oftentimes if you have the idea that they need to bring somebody, that person is you, So I saw, I'm seeing the treatment of young black students. I'm seeing, these young black men that I'm interacting with going to prison, going to getting killed, and it's really, I don't know if you've been in a school when a student has died or been killed, which I feel like is different. And the school kind of has this mentality of it's back to normal. Well, you have to go to class. We have to be on time. And it's not even a real sense of doing some type of like trauma discussion with a student in the midst of this. It's foreign. And it should be something that causes somebody to pause and say, this is an incorrect situation right here. Just having a situation where young people are dying at the rate that they are should be a situation where we say something is wrong and what are we going to do about it? It shouldn't be, well, that's them. That's their community or that's their race or that's not part of my family. And so I always felt like, no, that's my family and I have a responsibility to do something. So at that time, I met a group of people that also were working with young people and feeling the same frustration as me. And so we came together, we started an organization called One Hood. And we called it One Hood because, that's what we were attempting to do in Pittsburgh. We saw all these different communities and these different neighborhoods that had these like beefs with one another, that if you kind of ask, well, what's the genesis of the Homewood and East Hills beef? Where did it begin? Nobody can tell you. Where did the beginning of, the up top and down bottom of Hazelwood start? Nobody can really tell you this. You inherit this. You come into a world, this is how it is, you accept it, and then you keep doing what you do. And so we saw One Hood because we said, man, well, all the community, we're fighting one another, but we're all suffering from joblessness or unemployment, youth unemployment, sometimes as high as 80 to 90%. We're all suffering from failing school systems in our schools. We're all suffering from probably the worst housing that the city has to offer. We're all suffering from police brutality at a high level in our communities. And then instead of taking our frustrations out on those or doing something that can actually make a change, we take our frustration out on one another. And we harm one another, those closest to you. Isn't that how a lot of times it is? You're frustrated and you harm the person closest to you, instead of turning and doing something that can maybe change that situation. So when we started One Hood, two things happened. And I don't know, somebody has to maybe give me a time check. I don't know if somebody can give me maybe a 5 or 2 minute warning type of thing, because I'll be out there kicking it. 6 minutes. So when we started One Hood, two things happened. One, in Homewood, there was 6 shootings in a 21-hour period, and a 3 and a 4-year-old got shot. And we knew what the common response. The common response is something shocking like that. A press conference is held. People talk about what they're going to do, and the situation goes back to normal. So we said we don't want to do a press conference. We want to go. And the people, or there's a community meeting called, and guess what? Those people who are involved in those type of things, they're not coming to the press conference, and they're not coming to the community meeting. And so we took a group of about 30 to 40 black men, and we said we're walking the streets. And we start walking the streets. And one of the reasons we start walking the streets because the police response in the city of Pittsburgh was to they have a thing called the Bear. It's almost like a little tank. And they rolled the Bear down the middle of Homewood with snipers on it. And so our response was we want to take these men to the community. And we got such a response. People were like just sitting there, significant others just out. They didn't even know what we was doing. You just go out and walk with them. You know what I'm saying? It was like such a powerful response. Children were running up to us, and it was something that we said, no, we have to continue to do this. And in doing so, what we saw was Homewood is not that bad. There are some, hot spots. There's some areas, but overall, it was a community of peaceful, law-abiding people going to work and doing things just like everybody else. Second thing that happened was police pulled over a woman named Pamela Lawton. She had a 7-year-old daughter who was in the front seat named Jocelyn Lawton. The police officer, Eric Tutusco, came to the passenger side with his gun drawn. Jocelyn, seeing the gun, is trying to get out of the seatbelt because she's scared. And his response was, if this little girl doesn't stop moving, I'm going to blow her brains out. There's 5 witnesses. So we heard about this and we began to advocate for Jocelyn Lawton and to get this police officer removed from the force. So then we started organizing around that. They actually charged Pamela Lawton with disorderly conduct. And the reason they charged her with disorderly conduct because when the other police officers finally came, she literally jumped out of the car and jumped into one of the officers' arms, calling out for Jesus, because she's thinking that this man was going to kill her daughter. And so that cry out for Jesus in that situation was considered disorderly conduct. And so when Pamela Lawton went to turn herself in, we had 75 people with her, 4 lawyers to help her with this situation. Eventually the charges were dropped against Pamela Lawton, but the judge said that he did not believe that Eric Tutusco pulled his gun out and pointed at Jocelyn Lawton. Tutusco said that he took his gun out and pointed it at the ground. I don't know if I've ever said, do they train you to do that? What's the ground going to do? Like, is the ground a threat? Have you ever seen an officer pull his gun and point it at the ground? So, unfortunately, 6 months later, Tutusco killed a mentally disturbed Asian man in Oakland, the neighborhood of Oakland. I say all that to say, and I know I probably got a few more minutes, because we inherit an unequal city in the city of Pittsburgh. We inherit a city that's America's most livable city that's touted. I've traveled a lot. You go to the airport, America's most livable city. You go to the website, America's most livable city. But at the same time, the same year it was named America's most livable city, according to the United States Census, we're the poorest working class black community in the entire country. Poorer than Detroit, poorer than Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. At the same time, the University of Pittsburgh did a study and said we lead the nation in single-parent households. We lead the nation in juveniles and locked up, the city of Pittsburgh. And so the question is, if this is what we inherit, what are we going to do about it? And I say we because I feel like all of us as Pittsburghers have a responsibility to try to change that situation. You might not live in Homewood or East Hills in these neighborhoods, but if you're a part of Pittsburgh, you should want to see the most equitable those policies of closing schools, moving students, closing community centers, putting development, gentrification into the west side, into the, to tear the projects down, you build Cabrini Green, you tear these projects down, you try to move the black people out, and it creates, Chicago had the most violent weekend in its history on the 4th of July weekend, and Mayor Rahm Emanuel's response was, homicides are down. So I guess because people didn't get killed and just shot, it's okay. But really, his thing is, oh, that's them. That's in that community, that's there. We who live here don't have to worry about that. And so I see those same policies taking place here in Pittsburgh as somebody that lives in East Liberty. I live right up the street. And I remember when East Liberty, I watched them tear the projects down and put up a Target, and Whole Foods, and Patron, and BRGR. And as somebody that lives in East Liberty, I think it's nice. And what we can do is walk around and enjoy it and act like we don't have any responsibility to the people that we replaced. We can't just show up and say we inherited this and it's good for us. And I want to live in a diverse community, and the community gets more and more, I don't know what the word is, but non-diverse. So I just wanted to share, can I show a video? Do I have time? So I want to show a video that I did.
Welcome to America's most livable city. Please ignore the invisibles with me. See, Pittsburgh, we built its economy, but we still lead the nation in black poverty. Welcome to America's most livable city. Just transit cuts, a brother can't even take the bus. This is the ugly truth, no need to make it up. This some magazine comes along and places us as most livable in the USA. What? Say what? Guess they didn't survey us, cause life is cut shorter than razors where they raise us. Judges erase us and quick to hang us, and police tase us until we never wake up. Welcome to America's most livable city. Please ignore the invisibles with me. See, Pittsburgh, we built its economy, but we still lead the nation in black poverty. Welcome to America's most livable city. Just ignore the invisibles with me and state your business, cause here, the place you live in depends on your race and privilege. And downtown, it's a bunch of new buildings, glass and steel cathedrals that cost a few million. They make billions to treat the dude's illness with medicine and pharmaceuticals, so who's dealing? But the schools are failing, screw children. Just make sure the office has a see-through ceiling. Pitt University and CMU killing. Classes cost thousands, I don't see you feel them. How we gonna get a job in biotechnology if all we ever learn is survival psychology? And why we so poor if y'all revive the economy, but we ain't get nothing besides an apology? Tear down the projects and put up a target, then build new homes so they can stimulate the market, but move us out the neighborhood so we can never harvest. The only thing we guaranteed in Pittsburgh is charges. Welcome to America's most livable city. Please ignore the invisibles with me. See, Pittsburgh, we built its economy, but we still lead the nation in black poverty. Welcome to America's most livable city. Just ignore the invisibles with me and state your business, cause here, the place you live in depends on your race and privilege.
This is what we inherited. So you might not be responsible, but I feel like we are responsible to make Pittsburgh a better place.